Hey folks, it's Andrew from Gemba Red, and today we're going to be talking about pulsing and what it is and why you would use it, and what are some of the downfalls of using pulsing, and how you might get it. So pulsing, has been used in red light therapy in the studies for quite a long time because they used to use, mostly lasers, which were high power. And what would happen with lasers is that you could heat up the skin and heat up the body too much. If you heat up the tissue too much, usually beyond 45 degrees Celsius is usually kind of the part where, the FDA and most people will agree, that's where you start to get tissue breakdown. You break down collagen, you break down your tissue and your cells. So obviously you don't want that. You don't want such a high power laser that'll burn you or ablate you. They use lasers for surgery, for cutting applications, for LASIK, for different applications that are meant to be high power and meant to be kind of cutting or burning or coagulating. So that's why they called it low-level laser therapy, low-level light therapy. And one of the ways to get around this, if you've got a device that's too high power, this is a high power device. I made an instructables how to make it. And, if I leave it on my skin for too long, it'll overheat. And I'm talking like 20 or 30 seconds, it'll overheat. So what I did, I added a little pulse module, so now it can pulse. And so that's about a 10 hertz pulse. And what that means is it's just turning off and on 10 times per second. So hertz just means per second. HZ is the kind of abbreviation. So now I can use this a little bit more comfortably, for a longer period of time and enjoy that higher intensity and not, risk that breakdown. So that's kind of the main reason when you read most of the clinical studies, they're actually increasing the intensity of the pulsed laser, and they're comparing it to a lower intensity of the continuous laser. And so that's the big disparity. So sometimes people will grab a clinical study and say, pulsing is better for recovery or better for this or better for that. But when you read the details, there's nothing special about the pulse. It's that they use the higher intensity and were able to, manage the tissue temperature better. So two things, they were able to have that higher intensity of pulse, and you're keeping the tissue cooler. And so both of those things led to the better outcome, not intrinsically some pulse rate. And why am I talking about this? Because people are going to be grabbing stuff out of thin air and saying, we've got some new pulse, some Neuger pulse. What does that mean? So that's the thing. You got to stay skeptical about certain things like pulsing. The second reason you might want to use pulsing, other than the thermal benefit, is certain brainwave entrainments, like 10 hertz for alpha, 40 hertz for gamma. You've seen V-Light using this kind of technique for the intranasal probes, kind of targeting your brain, so you can kind of, if you're pulsing 10 hertz and some of that's reaching your brain could synchronize with that kind of frequency, and that might be a beneficial, wavelength or frequency for your brain to kind of get into alignment with. So that's kind of the second thing. So you can see some of that, but it's almost separate. It's a little bit, you've got the pulsing for temperature control, you've got pulsing for brainwave entrainment, and then kind of there's this third category of why you would use pulsing, which is there some intrinsic benefit? There's Paul Neuger, Dr. Neuger, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. He was a French doctor in the 70s that came up with certain frequencies. He was actually an expert in auricular therapy, which is acupuncture for the ears, and he mapped kind of the ears to certain meridians, and he kind of pioneered modern auricular therapy. And somewhere along the way, he came up with some frequencies that have some healing benefits, and that was later adopted into some laser acupuncture kind of techniques, where they would pulse the laser at different meridians with the frequency that corresponds to some sort of healing mumbo jumbo. And so you got to really keep skeptical, because I've searched, PubMed, I've searched the big databases, and you can't find anything about Nogier or Nogier and his frequencies. Nobody's actually studied this. So you got to, it's fine if you want to try it out, but, you got to stay skeptical. And, so you'll see the downside of pulsing is that it's actually kind of stressful. That's why I'm not going to try to pulse too much into the camera right now, because it can set off certain people with epilepsy or migraines, or with the sensitivity to pulsing and strobe lights, and you can get disoriented. So there's kind of a dark side to pulsing as well. I've got a tactical flashlight that has a pulsing at 8 hertz, 8 times per second. And that's used to disorient, your assailants. So you aim it at their eyes and you pulse it 8 hertz in their eyes, and you can disorient someone. So it could aim this at someone and disorient them. So it's a weapon, sometimes. And then the famous Pokemon incident, which is a TV show in the 90s, that one of the episodes that was aired in Japan set off, hundreds or maybe, a couple thousand children were sent to the hospital with seizure like symptoms, or flicker like symptoms. And there's a lot of research that was stemmed from the 90s, from that incident, to understand the harm of pulsing and flicker and things like that. And they came up with, it was about 12 hertz of flashing images on the screen, and a lot of it is the deep red that if people are sensitive to it, the deep red is what triggers them as part of the pulsing. So you have to be careful. You don't want to just be aiming it around at anybody if they're sensitive to it. So you got to be very careful. That's why, it might not be a good idea to just start slapping pulse frequencies into a panel. Because as we've talked about, these panels, there is actually just one clinical trial of a Juvelite that showed no significant benefit. And, I think that's kind of disappointing, but shows us that these types of panels aren't even fully vetted out by the science. We still don't know a lot about how to dose non-contact treatments. And so if you're going to start adding an extra gimmick on top of an already gimmicky, over-marketed type of panel, like pulsing, you're going to stack, you're going to use these panels that they're non-contact, so you've got this skin reflection issue, and then you're going to add all these frequencies. It's still not proven. Like with the, again, with the context of the laser, with most of the studies, you're using skin contact, so you're not getting a lot of that pulse into your eye when you're doing the treatment. It's mostly getting absorbed into my skin, so my eye isn't really affected. I see a little bit of pulsing that's diffusing through my skin because it's a very effective light, but otherwise there's not much of an issue. So you'll notice that Juve actually is including pulsing into their newest generation lights, but they're only pulsing the near infrared, the invisible wavelength. And again, that could be a safety aspect, that they chose not to do pulse the red. Like this light, we're gonna turn it on. This is so we're gonna do, let's change the mode. We're gonna do 1 hertz and just see how that feels. Only 1 hertz should be okay, but if you've got flicker distress, then turn off, pause the video or whatever. 1 hertz is just gonna be a slow kind of flash. Let's see. Right. So that's just 1 hertz pulse. 1, 2, 3, right. So, it's a little bit annoying. Otherwise, if you're using a panel that's non-contact, your skin's probably not overloading with heat anyway. So that's the number one reason you would use it in a study. It's not relevant for a non-contact panel to begin with. Then, you can set this panel. This is from Sadie. I'll put the link below. you can set it to 10 hertz or you can set it to 40 hertz. Different things. You can play around with the brainwave entrainment aspect. And it's pre-programmed with the no gear frequencies. So if you want to play around with those, again, just exercise caution if people are around that are sensitive to pulsing and flicker and things like that. And you'll notice that, like with Juve's mentality of only pulsing the near infrared, this is a near infrared 810 nanometer LED. So obviously I can pulse this, and right, there's not, you don't really notice much. I'm not really going to be distressed by an invisible wavelength that is being pulsed. Maybe there's subliminally there's something, but really, that's not as stressful. So you could pulse the near infrared and not the red, and maybe get some of those benefits without the harm in it. So again, pulsing's a kind of an exciting thing. I think we're going to see a lot of panels and companies and people trying to capitalize on it. But it's important to do things the right way, because like the study that used the Juve Elite panel showed us, if these companies keep on kind of muddying the science just to make a profit, and then the clinical science gets all confused, then we're gonna take the science in the wrong direction. We're gonna hurt the science. So you can make a lot of money capitalizing on pulse, but in the long run, it's gonna hurt the entire industry. It's gonna hurt the legitimacy of what we're trying to do here. So keep that in mind. If you're using pulse to reduce heat, then that's great. If you're using pulse for brainwave entrainment, maybe intracranially through the forehead or through the nose or ear or whatever, that's a good application. But again, if there's intrinsic benefits to pulsing, like maybe our cellular functions are syncing up with the pulse and maybe you get some extra benefit, we still don't know. There may, again, we're hopeful and we think there might be certain frequencies out there that we can line up with our cellular functions, but I'm pretty sure no one's really nailed that down yet. So for now, it's usually safest just to stick with, high quality, low flicker, continuous, LED devices that are on the market. And, I'd like to wait and see, where the pulsing technology kind of goes. But again, if you want to pick up a light from Sadie, they're making it. You can add pulse modules, from LED Supply. And, companies like V-Light sell the transcranial kind of stuff and intranasal stuff. So there's some options out there if you want to try out pulsing. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful and you learned a lot about pulsing and clarified some of the gimmicks and some of the things that are purposely being deceptive on the market. And let us know if you have any questions. Thanks.